Hey friends, hope you're doing well. It's beautiful here in Indianapolis. It's warmed up just a little bit. I don't have any coffee. I could stand some. But I wanted to talk this morning. I was thinking about Bruce Springsteen and when he played at the Armadillo World Headquarters. I'd always heard that that was the first gig that he ever did in Austin back in, I think it's 1974. And I decided I would look through some old newspaper archives and just find out if there was any mention of that. The Armadillo World Headquarters, for those of you that don't know, which I think most of you do, this amazing venue that was the first place where, I don't know a better way to say it, hippies and rednecks sat next to each other and enjoyed music together, and there wasn't any trouble. And that's why Willie Nelson loved it, Jerry Jeff Walker loved it. Willie Nelson talked Waylon Jennings into coming and playing there. And there would be some cat with a tie-dyed shirt, looks like Allen Ginsberg, you know, tripping balls or whatever, sitting right next to some guy who, you know, I'm not sure who he might look like, Hank Hill. And they'd get along just fine, and because they both love music. And I like that, get along because you like music. So I started researching, and I found some Springsteen stuff that I'm going to get to here in a second. But as I was going down this rabbit hole, it just, I couldn't, it just reminded me of everything that was great about Austin back then. I was seeing these listings for bands that would be playing around. And it's just amazing that you could go on one night a week. Here's something, just for instance, one night you could go see these different people. You could go see the Giesenslaws at the Latin Quarter. You could go see Asleep at the Wheel at El Paso Cattle Company. You could go see the Fire Dogs at Castle Creek. I'm sorry, Frida and the Fire Dogs at Castle Creek. You could go see Ray Wiley Hubbard at the pub. You could see Kenneth Threadgill at Shakey's. You could see Bruce Springsteen and the Greasy Will at the Armadillo World Headquarters. And as I scroll down here, I think there were some more. Jerry Jeff Walker at Castle Creek. This is the next night. Asleep at the Wheel at El Paso Cattle Company again. There was just a bunch of names like this that were just really catching, you know, I was paying attention to. I'll scroll over to another article. There's a guy named Joe Gracie who was a special writer in the Austin American-Statesman. It's kind of weird. There was quite a few different articles written about Springsteen, like he was right before he came to town and right after, the week afterwards or whatever. They seemed like they were written by a few different people. So there were multiple people at the Austin American-Statesman writing about music in 1974. Think about your newspapers nowadays and how cut back they are. And, you know, Austin, Texas, who really wasn't on the map the way that we think of it now. We look back and realize how special the time was, but they were, you know, in the beginnings of those times, they were creating something, and it was actually being written about. So this guy, Joe Gracie, is a special writer in the Austin American-Statesman, says Monday Night Tex-Mex Review. And he's just got a little column where he just kind of, a little bit of a smart ass, which every town has that guy. And it's fun, as long as they're not writing about you. But he talks about Thursday night at Castle Creek, we watched David Bromberg and his band do a good set. Bromberg has lots of energy and charm, enough to carry the audience right along with him. His singing is steadily improving, and his picking is already there. Imagine if somebody wrote that about you. His singing is steadily improving. And David Bromberg. Later, Jerry Jeff Walker, who just arrived from an abortive assault on Mexico, and Townes Van Zandt, who has been trying to leave for Mexico for a week, got up and did some impromptu jamming with the band. Townes is working on putting a band together and looking around for an acceptable record contract. I think Townes continued looking for an acceptable record contract for quite a while there. I'm curious what Townes Van Zandt's band was like. Bromberg told us that he had just come from Houston and everybody there is going to move here in 2 weeks. Looks like our nice, clean little scene is about to be swamped by foreigners. We could all move to Lukenbach and start over. Bromberg and the Aztec Two-Step will be playing their last gig tonight. That's, I guess Austin did get invaded by Houston, and it was not a bad thing. And then it says, Soap Creek is shifting into H for haggard, happy, high, and hassled as this weekend rolls on. Tonight at the Saloon, Augie Meyer and the Western Headband demonstrate the Hilotes sound for the big city. I know I pronounced that wrong. I apologize. They'll also play tomorrow night. Monday night marks the first exposure anywhere of the Tex-Mex Review, starring Doug Somm, Freddie Fender, and Frida and the Fire Dogs. Fender is a man cloaked in deep Samian mystery. He has been around Texas for a few years, waiting in the wings of Texans' hearts for his time to arrive. Okay, and then once again, this is Joe Gracie in the Austin American-Statesman. He goes on about some other things, and he finally gets to Springsteen. Next week, be sure and see Bruce Springsteen at the Dillo, Armadillo World Headquarters. He's got some genuine energy on his side. His new album is every bit as good as the first one, and a lot less derivative. He is a bundle of raw talent searching for an identity. As soon as he finds one of his own, I'll like him a lot more. He still hasn't managed to stem the tide of rampant blathering. So, Joe wasn't too excited about Springsteen coming to town, but I kept looking and I found so many listings for amazing stuff going on for that week. But it appears Springsteen, and I don't think they were calling it the E Street Band yet. It appears that they played at the Armadillo for multiple nights, like 3 or 5 nights that week. And his second record had a major label deal and was starting to get a bunch of press and all of that stuff. And but he's still playing multiple nights. It just tells you how different the world of touring was in 1974, where we might still have, I don't even think we have like cover bands that come and play somewhere. That happened in the 80s, the last I can remember, maybe in the 90s, of 3 or 4 nights a week of the same cover band at certain bars that did that kind of stuff. But I've never witnessed that in Indianapolis, at least. I don't think anywhere else, of touring original bands with record deals playing multiple nights that are not sold out in advance. They're just simply booked there to do 4 nights. And it'd be pretty hard to keep that up. And anybody who has seen Springsteen in this era, like Springsteen fans are a bit much. I really dig Springsteen a lot, but the fans are a bit much. And I don't know a nicer way to say that, but it goes beyond sometimes just digging somebody's music, and it feels like religion or something, and you lose me there, but I really enjoy his music. And I'm not a big fan of the bombast of the E Street Band sometimes, but man, they're so freaking good. When it all lines up, it's just amazing. And when you forget sometimes how great he was in this era, for a long, long time too. I remember sitting on a friend of mine's couch in Austin, my buddy Cameron, and he went to do something, and he had some video, I don't know whether it was a bootleg or what, from the mid-70s, the E Street Band somewhere. And man, they were just unbelievable. How much charisma the whole band exuded, so much charisma. And you can see why people lost their minds if you went and saw that band live right then. And they'd yet to, most of the classics, the huge Springsteen classics had yet to really be written. So they're playing stuff that's yet, it's amazing to hear songs that aren't the all-time classics and a band still just blowing you over then. And you can see why people just completely lost their mind by the time they were playing the anthems. But anyway, this is Bob Duerschuk, staff writer for the Austin American-Statesman. If Bob is out there, I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name. It's Doerschuk. Bob Duerschuk. It says lyrics evoke Music of Bruce Springsteen, lyrics evoke New York life. First, an apology to the people who didn't get to see Bruce Springsteen at Armadillo last week. Perhaps they might have gone if I had been able to write about him before he left Austin for concerts in Dallas and points beyond. And to Bruce Springsteen, with whom I breakfasted last Thursday in an attempt to interview the Mad Cashbox magazine called the Man Cashbox magazine called the Best Young Artist of 1973. This is very grainy, this newspaper thing, and it's a little bit hard to read, so I'm sorry. It was early and the Best Young Artist was a bit disheveled. He had just gotten up, and as we sat together over coffee and sandwiches in the hotel restaurant, his eyes tended to close and his thoughts to wander, presumably back to his bed upstairs in mid-sentence. He says, "I've been in Austin since Tuesday," Springsteen mumbled, running a hand through his untamed hair. "The music here reminds me of what San Francisco was doing a few years ago. It's good, but I couldn't play country music. I haven't lived that kind of life." You know, that's pretty great. Springsteen hanging out in Austin and recognized what was happening and the importance of it. To compare that to what happened in San Francisco a few years earlier, that's pretty damn huge. I mean, we're talking about Summer Love and all that. But, lost my place. Springsteen, who has been called a genius and the next great talent in the jumbled world of rock music, was trying hard to remember the days he rode the buses around New York City, playing in innumerable clubs and absorbing the odors, sounds, and tastes of the city. Sometimes I would get on the bus back to Asbury Park, his hometown in New Jersey, and feel glad I could leave New York behind me for a while, but I never felt like quitting music. If you even think about doing that, you shouldn't be playing at all. Hardly anybody can look like a rock and roll superstar at breakfast, but Springsteen, a small man in his mid-20s who wore a brittle aged leather jacket and a beard that seemed to have been spared a mid-shave, seemed particularly foreign to that mold. After paying his bill, the man who several magazines say released the best record of 1973 wandered out into the streets of downtown Austin, presumably to get the feel of the strange, most un-New Yorkish town. Then came Friday night at the Armadillo. There was a tension in the air before the same Bruce Springsteen came out on stage, the kind of tension that augurs something out of the ordinary. When Springsteen did come on stage, he wore the same leather jacket, scratched his head the same way he did over breakfast, and mumbled his greetings in his familiar, inaudible monotone. Then the music began, and Springsteen began to change. The head scratchings, the awkward movements, the scratchy voice that demanded attention all suddenly acquired a meaning in the sounds of his compositions, all played by his band. Their dramatic control of dynamics and use of such unexpected instruments as the accordion and tuba allowed Springsteen the freedom to paint his musical pictures of the world. He lives in New York, Asbury Park, the hot beaches in the East Coast summers, and the children of the city. Few lyricists write as evocatively as Springsteen, and almost nobody delivers lyrics with a greater sense of dramatic effect or respect for their meaning. He is apparently a lover of New York, and thus can express the ugliness there as well as the beauty with a power quite rare in modern music. There's much more to the artist Springsteen than can be jammed into an article this size, or even expressed by the artist himself at breakfast. He is a man of extraordinary perception, as those who saw him can attest. Those who didn't will doubtless want to before too long. He will be around long enough for all of us to enjoy. That's Bob Dorschuk in the Austin American-Statesman. You could tell there were a lot of articles written like this about Springsteen in this time and then throughout the 70s. Just if you see one of those live, I don't know, they're probably on DVD, they're probably on YouTube for all I know. But if you see him in that period, you can understand. And I can only imagine in a small or medium-sized club to witness that in this moment when there's a lot of soft rock on the radio and stuff like that. And I like that stuff. But somebody playing this kind of rock and roll born out of 60s hits and stuff like that, you can understand why people were losing their minds. And Springsteen was becoming this legend, that became this massive thing that you either like or you don't, and that's cool. But I came for the Springsteen, and man, I was really, really happy to just see this slice of Friday and Saturday night in Austin, Texas, 1974, or even Tuesday or Thursday in Austin. It sounded like a freaking great place to be. But I know some of you guys were there then. You guys talk about it sometime in the comments. But I got some dates coming up with Todd Snyder. I'm going to put those dates down down below, and I'm going to go ahead and link a video up here that I published earlier this week, I think yesterday, about Towns Van Zandt, since I just mentioned Towns. Hope you'll watch that, and I'll see you somewhere down the road. Much love to you.